First Farm Law. Farmer can directly sell his produce to any company. Second Farm Law. The agreement to sell can be signed even before sowing of the crops. That is contract farming. Third Farm Law. Company can store in its godowns any amount of food crops without any restriction. On these three farm laws, what questions UPSC can ask in your prelims examination are outlined here. Now let us see the first farm law in a bit detail. Different states had their APMC laws, under which the first sale of farm produce has to be in a APMC mandi regulated by the state governments. Right? Now state government also imposes certain amount of tax when a sale is made in the APMC mandi. This law allows farmer to sell his produce outside this APMC mandi or even outside his state. Farmer can directly sell his produce online. Farmer can directly sell his produce to any individual or any shop or any company which has a PAN card. And on such direct sale, state government cannot impose any tax or any fee. When a sale is made in the APMC, then state government collects some tax. But on the direct sale, state government cannot collect any kind of tax or fee. If there is any dispute between the farmer and the buyer, then such disputes will not go to court. They will be resolved by that area's SDM or the ADM. This farm law does not shut down APMC or it does not end the MSP system. Second farm law is about contract farming. When a farmer, after harvesting his crop, goes to the market to sell it, sometimes he is not able to sell his crops because there is no demand in the market, or there may be demand but the prices are so low that the farmer is not able to make any profit and he remains in debt. He may even have to commit suicide. One solution is contract farming. Even before sowing the crops, farmer can sign a contract with a company that once the crops are ready, the company will definitely buy those crops at a definitive price. Right? So it's a win-win situation for the farmer because he has assured sale at assured price even before he harvests his crop. And the company also gets a regular supply of farm products. Now under this law, such a farming agreement, such a contract agreement between the farmer and the company can be for minimum one crop season or maximum 5 years. The contract should clearly state the price and the process that was undertaken to arrive at that price. If there is any dispute in this contract, then a resolution board will be set up which will have representatives both from the farmer and from the company. The resolution board will give its verdict within 30 days, else the matter will go to the SDM or then to the DM. This law clearly states that whatever be the penalty, whoever may be penalized, be it the farmer or the company, whatever may be the penalty, but one thing is for sure, that farmer's land cannot be taken away to recover any dues. The third farm law amends the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. When our country got independence, then there was very low agricultural output. When the supply of agricultural commodities is low, in such situation also many traders used to hoard lots of agricultural goods. This created artificial scarcity in the market, hence the price increased. When the price increased, the trader released the goods and made huge profits. To prevent such things, in 1955, Government of India brought Essential Commodities Act 1955. Under this act, there is restriction on the amount of goods that can be stored with anyone, be it any trader, any company, any shopkeeper, anyone, right? Now this act has a schedule, okay, which mentions the products on which this act applies. Currently, the products in that schedule under this act are things which are related to our food, that is seeds, fertilizers and food items. Things related to our clothing, that is jute and cotton hank yarn. Petroleum products and drugs, that is your medicines. Masks and sanitizers were included in this act last year, but right now they are not in this act. So that was the Essential Commodities Act 1955. Now what has the government done? Government has amended this 1955 Act to say that any trader or any company can store food items in as much quantity as it wants. Government won't interfere. Government will interfere only in extraordinary circumstances, like in case of war, famine, natural calamity or extraordinary price rise. Now what is this extraordinary price rise? That is when the price of perishable goods increases by more than 100% or non-perishable goods price increases by more than 50%. The base for this calculation will be either the average of last 1 year or the average of last 5 years, whichever is less. Now the question is, why has government removed such limitations on the stock? Because when the first two farm laws become successful and farmer sells his crops to big companies, then obviously big companies, when they do big procurement, they will have to store the food crops, right? And when they will store the food crops, then it is possible that the state governments will conduct some raids on them under this law. Therefore, government has said that such a situation should not arise. We are allowing you to store as much goods that you want. Okay, so it is, this law is amendment is kind of a necessity for the first two laws to work in a optimum manner. Now let us see in brief, a brief history basically, why government had to bring these laws. See, farming is not a simple activity. Farming is dependent on weather. Even if weather is not a spoil sport, even if weather is fine, there is a good harvest, even then the farmer does not get regular income. His income is seasonal in nature. Now when the farmer harvests the crops, he is in hurry to sell it. Farmer cannot store his crops for long because uh, maybe because the farmer does not have enough land to store it. He does not have proper proper facilities to store the food grains in cold storage, or let us say protect them from the rain. There can be leakages, there can be theft. So farmer is desperate to sell his crops. This desperation results in distress sale, which sometimes results in fraud. Why fraud? Because there is inequality. Farmer usually sells his crops to a big farmer, a big trader or a big money lender. These are powerful and educated people. There is huge power imbalance between the buyer and the seller. There is also some information asymmetry. These people know what are the market conditions, what are the correct market rates. Farmer does not know what is the correct market rate, or he does not even have the resources to take his harvest to the market and get a proper rate. Okay, now this power imbalance between the two sometimes results in fraud and sometimes even in the loss of land by the farmer. Basically, the farmer is exploited due to this power imbalance. One solution that the government of India found, okay, this was a situation mainly after independence. Okay, it happens now also, but on a very, very small scale. After independence, such things were very rampant. Therefore, what government thought was, government devised a system of APMCs in 1960s and 70s. Here, state governments enacted the APMC laws. Under those laws, first sale by the farmer has to be in a APMC mandi only. Farmer cannot sell his product directly to anyone. He will have to bring his crops to APMC mandi, and there only through auction will his crops be sold. Or this all this will be overseen by a APMC committee, which will have 50%, which will the composition of this committee will be 50% farmers, some traders, and some government officials. Now it all sounds very good, but actually it had some problems. For example, if a farmer goes to the APMC mandi, and let us say there are 10 traders, okay, who are bidding for the crops of this farmer, then ideally, since there is open auction, then he should get a good price. But to stand here as a trader, one needs a license from the APMC committee. And APMC committees usually do not give license to everyone. Okay, they give license only to their known people, the near and dear ones, or one who pays them some money, right? That is the practicality of this. Now there are only few traders who are bidding for this crop. Now they act like a cartel. They, even before the auction happens, they decide that when that farmer comes, we will not quote a price higher than this particular price. Therefore, farmer never realizes a good price because they have formed a cartel and not offering a good price to the farmer. So ultimately he has to sell his produce at a low rate. So the solution to this problem was, you need to introduce a new trader, and that trader was the FCI, Food Corporation of India. So a 11th trader came here, FCI, Food Corporation of India. That is basically the government, basically the central government. Now central government, this FCI, will also bid in this auction. FCI will also bid for the farmer's produce. At what rate will FCI bid? That is your MSP. Okay, so suppose MSP is 2000 rupees. So even if these traders have formed a cartel and they are not offering the farmer more than 1500 rupees, then FCI is bound. FCI is basically government. It will always offer the farmer MSP of 2000 rupees, and therefore farmer will sell his crop to FCI. Like all systems, this system also has some imperfections or loopholes. According to government data, about only 5% of farmers of our country are able to sell their produce to FCI at MSP. 95% farmers are not able to sell their produce to FCI at MSP. There are various reasons for it. See, when a farmer goes to a APMC to sell his crops to FCI, sometimes he has to wait for a long time. You must have seen in newspapers also that even for 7 days or 10 days, farmer waits outside the gate of APMC or FCI to sell his produce. FCI does not say no. FCI does not say that we will not purchase. They simply say that yes, we will purchase, okay, but it is taking time. There are not 100 people from FCI, okay. A few government officials would have come, okay, and they are procuring, and procurement takes time, paperwork takes time. So slowly we will call you. But farmer is desperate to sell his crops. He is standing there on the road, right? There can be rains. Anyone can, steal his goods, his produce. Okay, many things can happen. So farmer is desperate to sell his produce, but he is not able to sell it. There is also much corruption there. Okay, inside the APMC also, big traders and your FCI officials. Sometimes there is nexus between them also. So one of the things that happens is, a big trader will approach this farmer who is waiting there for 10 days, and this big farmer will offer him that you can sell me your produce at 1800 rupees. Let us say the MSP there is 2000 rupees, right? And farmer is waiting to sell his produce at MSP of 2000 rupees. He is not able to sell it. So the trader who already has some contracts in FCI, he will offer farmer 1800 rupees and farmer will happily sell his produce to him. Farmer will think, I am not getting MSP, fine, but 1800 rupees is also good. It's a good amount. I will take cash in hand and I will give my goods to him. So farmer happily goes to his home. This trader immediately goes and gives the goods to FCI because he has contacts there, this big trader. Okay, and this big trader in this transaction earns 200 rupees. Right. So such way there are many imperfections or loopholes in this system. But the important point here is that this 1800 rupees figure came from this 2000 rupees. That is, MSP here acted like a reference point. Okay, what if this trader offered him just 800 rupees, not 1800? Suppose you offered only 800 rupees. Farmer will never sell his crop to him. Right? So MSP although benefits only 5% farmers, but indirectly it benefits many farmers. MSP maintains a price level of goods in our economy. Now, to even make the system better, in 2003 central government brought a model APMC Act. It is not a proper law that you are bound by it. Okay, it was a model act. That is, states were encouraged to amend their APMC acts as per this act. What basically this act said was that you should free the farmer from selling anywhere that he wants. You should stop the restriction of that farmer should sell his goods only at APMC. That restriction should not be there. So some states enacted such a law. Okay, for example, Bihar. Then you can see that in 2016 Maharashtra government also initially permitted farmers to sell their vegetables and fruits outside APMC because vegetable and fruits are perishable commodities, right? And in 2018 Maharashtra government simply said that yes, farmers in Maharashtra, they are not required to come to APMCs. They can sell to anyone that they want. Okay, so one thing you should remember is that these APMC acts are enacted by the state governments. So there are there is huge variations between the states. In some states there is a strong system of APMC, like in Punjab and Haryana. In some states this APMC system practically does not exist. On paper there will be a law, but practically farmer is producing and selling his goods to anyone he wants and anyone is procuring from him. Government will never put a farmer in jail that how did you sell your produce outside APMC, right? So on paper APMC is in many states, but practically it is implemented. This system exists practically only in few states. ENAM. In the year 2016, central government formed this ENAM or Electronic National Agricultural Market. APMC are agricultural markets. This is National Agricultural Market. What here central government did was, central government said that see, in India there are many states, right? And in each state there are some APMCs. Now right now farmer is bound to sell his goods only in this APMC, suppose, right? Now what ENAM does is, ENAM connects it electronically connects thousands of APMCs across India. So now what farmer is doing is, farmer through computer, he is seeing that what is the price. Okay, what is the price, what is the auction price, what price can I get in not just my APMC but in thousands of APMCs across India. So ENAM digitally connected many APMCs across India. Now did it connect all the APMCs? No, not all the APMCs, because still many states have their strict APMC laws under which farmer is bound to sell only to that APMC. So in that case that state is not a part of your ENAM. Okay, so slowly government is increasing the number of APMCs which are on this portal. The three laws allow farmer to sell his produce outside APMC. They basically give freedom to the farmer to sell his produce to anyone that he wants. It's a good thing. But farmer says, I don't want this freedom. Why does farmer not want this freedom? Okay, so the reason here is that he is afraid of the free market forces. Farmer feels safe inside APMC. He does not want to go outside APMC. Farmer knows that inside APMC there is government who is monitoring all the trades. There is Food Corporation of India that will not let the prices fall down. Therefore, farmer feels safe in the APMC system. He is afraid that if he goes outside the APMC system to sell his produce to the free market forces, then he will be exploited just like the pre-APMC days. Well, the solution is quite simple. Ask the farmer not to go outside APMC. Government is not dismantling the APMC system. Government is not closing down FCI or stopping the MSP system. These systems will still work. So it is farmer's choice basically. Tell him that you can still go to your APMC and sell your produce to FCI. No one is forcing you to go to the outside market forces. Right? That is a good argument. There was a time when there were a number of mobile recharge shops. You used to go to the shop, pay ₹100 and get your mobile recharged. Then came Paytm. Paytm offered heavy discounts on each recharge. Paytm said you pay us only ₹80 and you will get a recharge of ₹100. Now people voluntarily went to Paytm and slowly these shops shut down. Today also you will see only very few such shops. And the thing here is these shops are not making much revenue from mobile recharge because today everyone is going to Paytm only. Right? Now what happens is in the long term, when these mobile shops actually shut down, when these mobile recharge shops actually shut down, then at the same time Paytm also stopped giving these discounts. Today Paytm does not give any discount. When Paytm was giving this 20-25% discount, Paytm was running in heavy losses. Still it continued to give this discount despite being in loss because it was waiting for these shops to close down. Today farmer has a choice. He can go to the APMC mandi and sell his produce at MSP for, let us say, 2000 rupees. Or today when he goes outside APMC, then these corporates will offer him rupees 2200 more than APMC's, more than the MSP rate. So what will the farmer do? What did you do? You went to Paytm. Similarly, it makes perfect sense for the farmer to go to the corporates. Now after some years, when no farmer will go to APMCs, APMCs will automatically close down. Government will not close them down. Corporates will not force them to close down. Farmers themselves involuntarily will be closing down the APMCs because they will stop going there. Now the question is, can these companies really offer a rate to the farmer higher than MSP? And is that sustainable? Yes, that is sustainable. See, in APMC, if a farmer is selling at ₹2000 at MSP, and when those goods goes through different traders and finally reaches you, the price increases from 2000 rupees to 3000 rupees. Big retailers, what they do is they are not using any middlemen. They are procuring directly from the farmer. So they may pay farmer even 2200 rupees and they may sell it to you even at 2800 rupees, making a profit of 600 rupees. And they are more efficient also. Different traders keep their small commission and there is lot of storage cost. There is some pilferage, leakage, many issues are there. But when a big retailer, a single retailer, a big company does this work, then it does very efficiently. Hence, it brings efficiency to the supply chain and it benefits both the farmer and the consumer. Now, when this efficiency comes in the supply chain, then obviously many traders will lose their work. They will become jobless, or you can say their financial condition will deteriorate. Therefore, the traders are protesting, and that is natural also. Anyone who will lose their job, then obviously they will protest. So that is a natural thing. The question here is, for how long will the big retailer give this more than MSP price to the farmer and good price to the consumer? How long will this continue? In case of mobile recharge shops, once the mobile recharge shops shut down, the discount by Paytm also stopped. So once the APMCs close down, once this trader network closes down, will these companies continue, or will they increase their price? Because that time there will be no APMC system and farmer will have no choice. There will be no buyer to purchase goods from the farmer. There will be no supply chain. It is not enough that you have money and farmer is ready to sell and you can purchase. There has to be some supply chain. Not everyone living in the city can go to a village. Not every farmer can come to the city to sell, right? There has to be a good supply chain in between, which these traders provide. When this system closes down, only companies will be left. At that time, these companies can continue to purchase from the farmer at good rate, or like Paytm, they will stop giving the incentives. That is, they will give only very less money to the farmer. That thing only time will tell. Okay, there is no certainty about it. That is a purely business decision by these companies. This is precisely this uncertainty, this future uncertainty is the reason why farmers are demanding that there should be a law for MSP. Right now, MSP is not a law, right? So farmers are demanding that government should bring a law that no sale in our country should happen below MSP. If there is a law, if there is such a law, and obviously in future government will not decrease the MSP, right? Every year government increases the MSP. So if there is a law, then in future these companies will always pay to the farmer at least the MSP. Then farmers will be happy. Then this uncertainty of these companies decreasing these rates will not be there. One question: does this big retailer has to be an Indian company? Can it be a foreign firm? Basically what I'm asking is FDI allowed in this retail work? Answer is yes. 51% FDI is allowed in multi-brand retail. This I told you in the previous class. See, a big issue related to the present issue of farm laws is the FDI in multi-brand retail. Whether you give interview this year or next year, this topic of multi-brand retail FDI may be asked. In the year 2012, it was very hot topic. I don't know how old you people were, but at that time, this issue of FDI in multi-brand retail was just like your farm laws right now, or even a bigger issue. As I just now explained to you, when a big retailer replaces or bypasses the traditional supply chain system, then this brings efficiency to your supply chain. The big retailer will directly buy from the factory and sell to the consumer, which is a win-win situation for everyone except the traders, of course. In the year 2012, okay, government brought 51% FDI in this big retail system, multi-brand retail system. So even before this step of multi-brand retail system, FDI here, even before that, there was a system of big retailers like Big Bazaar. Okay, Big Bazaar exists from long time. Big Bazaar procures from factories and sells to you through its own stores. No middlemen are involved. Now, Big Bazaar is more efficient than your traders. However, there is even a more scope of efficiency. Foreign big retailers like Walmart are way more efficient than your Big Bazaar. There is simply no competition of our companies with foreign companies like Walmart. They can bring efficiency to your supply chain like no other company, right? Therefore, government said that let us allow 51% limit in FDI so that the foreign company will bring the money, they will bring their technology, and they will improve our supply chains. And it is not 100% FDI, it is 51%. 49% stake will be of Indian companies. So over a period of time, Indian companies will also learn, when they will work with Walmart, they will also slowly learn that how they are making their supply chains efficient. So big companies bring efficiency to the system. Problem is they monopolize the trade, and once they monopolize the trade, they may dictate the price. So when the government was bringing this 51% FDI in retail, then BJP clearly said that we are opposing this move. For example, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, that time in 2012, he said that these retailers, he's talking about the foreign retailers like Walmart, these retailers will then monopolize the trade and dictate the price of commodities used by the common man. Right? You can take the example of Jio. Okay, when Jio came, it almost, okay, so many people went to Jio from Airtel and Vodafone. Jio almost monopolized the market. Almost, you can say that Jio suddenly became so big that it was able to dictate the price. What other companies were charging rupees 500, Jio offered it to you in 150 rupees with even better technology. And other companies were forced to bring down their prices. So in this case, when Jio kind of monopolized the trade, it dictated the prices because it became a big company in that sector. Now this dictating the price can happen in a good way, it can happen in a bad way. In the case of Jio, it acted in the favor of consumer. It's a good thing. It brought down the prices. It can happen the other way also. The company can dictate the price, it can increase the price, like what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu was warning us at that time. One important difference between this 2012 and 2020 scenario is that in 2012 we allowed FDI in this retail process. In this retail process we allowed FDI, but we did not amend the APMC laws. Okay, so if these farm laws, if these farm laws did not come, then what will be the scenario? The scenario would have been that the big retailer, suppose Walmart is there, Walmart will take license from APMC to act like a trader. Right now in APMC, let us say there are 10 traders and the 11th trader is your FCI. Then a 12th trader will enter by the name Walmart in the APMC, and there will be a open auction. Whoever gives the best rate to the farmer, he will get the produce. Suppose Walmart is a very efficient company, therefore Walmart will bid highest in the APMC and it will take the produce and give directly to the consumer, making a profit. So that scenario was this 2012, okay, with this FDI in retail without the 3 farm laws. Now with the farm laws, the thing that has changed is that this company Walmart, it does not need to go to APMC. APMC will be there. Government is not closing down the APMC. Even if APMC exists, Walmart will go to your farmer and get the goods from there. Okay, and slowly when the APMC is automatically closed down because all farmers will sell to Walmart, then what Walmart will do, that no one knows. That is the reason why farmers are asking for the legal guarantee of MSP, that even if Walmart purchases from farmer, even after 10 years also, then also the rate should not fall down below MSP, right? And this 51% FDI limit, it has been retained. It has not been abolished. Don't think that the government has changed in 2014, so now this limit is not there. This limit still exists. That is, Walmart can still come to India, and Walmart and similar such companies can do this work. One interesting thought: why do we even need this MSP? See, even if this APMC is closed down and all sale happens through free market, it's okay na. I mean, in other products also, your household products and everything, this thing happens. There is no MSP for your toothpaste or soap or anything, and there is free market. So there is not one company which is producing the soaps. There are many companies. There is open competition, right? Why can't such a system work for your agriculture produce? Have you ever noticed, I'm telling you the answer now, have you ever noticed that the prices of vegetables fruits, pulses fluctuate a lot. Sometimes these commodities are selling at 20 rupees per kg, sometimes they will sell at 100 rupees per kg. Pulses may go up to 200 rupees per kg, right? There is wide fluctuation in the prices of fruit, vegetable, pulses. Now think for a moment, what is the price fluctuation in case of wheat and rice? Never. You must have never seen a news about a wide fluctuation in the price of wheat or rice, not even 20 years ago or 30 years ago. What is the reason? The reason is MSP, right? How is MSP the reason? See, right now, when APMC system is there, the first sale of APMC, the first sale of wheat and rice happens in APMC. Why I am saying only wheat and rice? Because Government of India gives MSP for 23 crops, but out of these 23 crops, government procures only wheat and rice in a big way. In wheat and rice, government follows open procurement policy. Under open procurement policy, whatever wheat and rice farmer offers to FCI, FCI will definitely buy. And FCI is doing this thing in APMC. Farmer is bound to sell in APMC. Whichever retailer, however small or big, has to come to APMC. Everything is happening in APMC, and in APMC for wheat and rice, open procurement policy is happening at MSP. Therefore, you can say that wheat and rice enters the supply chain at MSP. When wheat and rice enters the supply chain at MSP, then whichever route it takes to reach you, whether through small traders or through big retailer, there will not be much fluctuation. There may be a difference of 5 or 10%, but wide fluctuations from 20 rupees to 100 rupees and 200 rupees, that fluctuation never happens, because for sure your things are entering the supply chain at MSP. One very interesting thing that happened in Punjab 1 or 2 years ago was, let us say in Punjab, in a particular year, the total production of rice was 100 units. Now when FCI comes to Punjab to buy rice, then obviously the maximum that FCI will buy is 100 units of rice, because that is the production here. But it was found at the end of procurement season that FCI actually procured 104 units of rice. Production in Punjab was 100 units of rice. FCI procured 104. What is this magic? From where this extra 4 units of rice came? Extra 4 units of rice came from Bihar. MSP, I explained to you earlier also, MSP acts like a reference price. Traders in Punjab went to Bihar. In Bihar, there is no APMC system, right? Their prices of wheat and rice are very low. Farmers are very poor. They don't get good price. No APMC system, no FCI. So traders from Punjab went to Bihar. They offered good price to the Bihar farmer and brought his rice to Punjab and sold that rice to FCI, saying that it is our own rice, right? So throughout the country, you will never see any fluctuation, any strong fluctuation in wheat or rice price, because there is interstate trading also, and people buy from one place and another place, sell it at another place. So MSP basically sets the price of wheat and rice throughout the country. What does FCI does with so much of wheat and rice? That wheat and rice procured by FCI comes to our PDS shops. See, FCI is acting like a trader. This trader is buying wheat from farmer and paying to farmer MSP. In this process, and then once it purchases from the farmer the wheat and rice, then FCI gives this wheat and rice to distributes this wheat and rice to your state governments. Now it is state government's responsibility to sell this at fair price shops. When FCI procured from farmer, FCI paid to farmer MSP, and then FCI gave this to states. So states paid to FCI CIP, central issue price. Central issue price is since 2013, since NFSA 2013, this central issue prices for rice it is 3 rupees, wheat 2 rupees, and coarse grain 1 rupees. All this is per kg, right? So FCI gave MSP to farmer and got CIP, this very low amount, from states. In this process, FCI also incurred some procurement incidentals. That is, FCI will have to transport the grains from one place to another. There will be some labor cost, there will be some storage cost. Such things are called as procurement incidentals. Right? Now, central issue price you understood? Right? Now the thing is, this is called as your economic cost. The money that FCI paid, from FCI's pocket, whatever money went out, that you can call it as your economic cost. The money that came into the pocket of FCI is CIP, central issue price, that states are paying to FCI. The difference between the two is your food subsidy. For example, FCI paid 20 rupees to your farmer as MSP, and 5 rupees it incurred, okay, it incurred as a cost in your procurement incidentals in distributing the food grains to the states. That is 5 rupees. So 25 rupees FCI spent, and in return it got 2 rupees from states. So there is a loss of 23 rupees. This loss of 23 rupees to the FCI is given by the government of India to FCI as food subsidy. Now see this prelims 2019 question. Economic cost of food grains. This economic cost of food grains to FCI is MSP and bonus if any paid to the farmer. That is whatever FCI is paying to the farmer. Plus what? Plus the procurement incidentals and the distribution cost that FCI incurs in distributing to the states. That is your economic cost. FCI is a statutory body. Under FCI Act 1964, it comes under Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. FCI does not come under Ministry of Agriculture. The objectives of FCI are to give price support to the farmer, to get food grains for your PDS system, and create a buffer stock for nation's food security. Suppose there is monsoon failure for 2 years, then we will be dependent on importing the food grains. Therefore, certain buffer stock of food grains has to be maintained. These are the objectives of FCI. Now, Government of India is experimenting with direct cash transfer under PDS, for PDS, because see, some people are saying that if government is going to, through these farm laws, government is going to stop the MSP system, not directly but indirectly. Okay, obviously in after few years MSP system or APMC system will stop. That is the allegation, right? Now the question here is, if MSP system, APMC system stops and FCI is not able to procure wheat from the farmer, then what will states sell in their fair price shop in the PDS system? The answer is direct cash transfer. As given as a reply given by the minister in, I think, Rajya Sabha, it says that since 2015, Government of India is doing experiment with replacing your PDS system with direct cash transfer. What this experiment is, it is quite simple. Right now people are getting, let us say, wheat at 2 rupees per kg in PDS shop. Market price of wheat is, let us say, 40 rupees per kg. Suppose, right? Now what government will tell to the people here is, government will say, see, we are closing down the PDS shop. We don't have any food grains. We are closing down the PDS shops. There is food grain in the market. In the market, food grains is, wheat is available for 40 rupees per kg. You go to the market and purchase wheat for 40 rupees per kg. Okay, you were supposed to get wheat at 2 rupees per kg, but you buy it at 40 rupees per kg, and the remaining 38 rupees we are sending you in your bank account. Right? You got it? That is your direct cash transfer. So this thing government is already experimenting with it. So in case even if this your MSP system closes down, there's nothing to worry about. Okay, government will still give money to the people by closing the PDS shops. Just like the experimentation here in PDS, government is also experimenting at your procurement stage. For example, government is saying that currently government purchases wheat from the farmer and pays him money. Okay, that is your price support scheme. Under private procurement and stockist scheme, government says that private company will do the procurement. Private company will procure wheat from farmer and pay some money to the farmer, right? Now obviously private company will incur some loss in this transaction, then government of India will compensate the private company. That is private procurement and stockist scheme. The third thing here is about the price deficiency payment scheme. Here farmer will go to a market and sell his produce. Let us say the MSP was 2000 rupees. Had the farmer given to the government, he would have got 2000 rupees. But right now, under this experiment of price deficiency payment scheme, farmer goes to the market and sells his produce. In the market, the rate there is only 1500 rupees. Farmer wanted to earn 2000 rupees, but he earned only rupees 1500. So government of India will say, don't worry, we are sending 500 rupees into your bank account. We are sending 500 rupees into your bank account. So farmer got 1500 from market and 500 from government of India. So these are some experiments that the government of India is conducting under the PM Asha scheme, that is Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan. Some people are alleging that government will close down FCI, government will stop the MSP system. However, latest news is that FCI is doing record procurement of wheat and rice at MSP. Record procurement. Why is that? The reason is open-ended procurement policy. See, this is from your FCI website. It says for wheat and rice, these two food grains, FCI follows open-ended procurement policy, that is whatever food grains that the farmer brings to the FCI purchases it at MSP. Okay, FCI needs to supply. FCI procures from farmer and supplies to your states. FCI also maintains some buffer stock. These are the two requirements. Okay, wheat comes from here and goes to buffer stock and to states. Now once these two requirements are fulfilled, even after that, if farmer is offering more wheat and rice to the FCI, then FCI has no use of that wheat and rice. Still FCI will procure it. It will not say no to the farmer and it will give full MSP to the farmer. That is your open-ended procurement policy. So right now, if farmer is offering to the MSP, is offering grain and rice, wheat and rice to the FCI, it will procure, right? Because your APMCs are still working. So 2004 question regarding the procurement of food grains. It says that government follows a procurement target. No, government does not follow procurement target. Okay, government follows a open-ended procurement policy. So first statement is wrong. Second says MSP is only for cereals. Wrong. MSP is also for some pulses and oil seeds. So second is wrong. Third, for targeted PDS, wheat and rice are issued by government at uniform central issue price. Just like I explained it earlier, there is a central issue price, the price that state governments pay to FCI. So only statement 3 is correct. During the time of procurement, what MSP will be paid to the farmer? Who decides this? This is calculated by Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, CACP. This recommendation of CACP is sent to Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs headed by the Prime Minister. this CCEA finally takes the decision of MSP, right? To calculate MSP, it is important to know the expenses borne by the farmer, right? Now, what expenses has a farmer done? That calculation you can do in three different ways. Those three different ways of calculating the costs incurred by farmer in farming are A2, A2 plus FL and C2. A2 is the actual cost, actual money that comes out from the pocket of farmer. Farmer has to spend money on purchasing seeds, fertilizers, and on paying interest on bank loan. These are the actual expenditure that the farmer has to do. These are your A2 expenditure. Another is A2 plus FL, that is in actual costs you add the imputed cost or assumed cost of family labor. A2 plus FL. Assume that a farmer in one crop season by working on his own farm, he earns 1 lakh rupees. In one crop season, one farmer earns 1 lakh rupees by working on his own farm. In his family, there are two more people. Those two people of his family go to some other person's farm and work there. In return, they will get 20,000 rupees. Okay, so what is the total income of this family? The total income of this family is 1.2 lakh rupees. 1.2 lakh rupees is the total income of this family. Now farmer says to these two people of his family, when we have our own farm, why do you need to go to someone else farms? Okay, you should help me in my farm itself. So these two people will now help the farmer in his farm. Now by doing so, they are not getting this 20,000 rupees that they were earlier getting. So now the income of this family is just 1 lakh rupees. So in a way, this family is incurring a loss of 20,000 rupees of this 20,000 rupees, right? So if you add this 20,000 rupees that you're not earning, you could have earned, but you're not earning it right now. If you add this family labor cost also to your A2, then it becomes your A2 plus FL. C2 or comprehensive cost. Farmer is doing farming on his own land. However, had the farmer not been doing his farming on on his land, then he would have rented this land to someone else. By doing farming, farmer is not able to get the rent on his owned land. Similarly, farmer spent some money on buying seeds and fertilizers. Had a farmer not done this expenditure, he would have kept money in his bank account, and on that he would have earned some interest. So basically, if you include in A2 plus FL these assumed income that farmer could have got, if you add these things also, then you get your C2 or comprehensive cost, right? So now today, when government of India said many times that the MSP that we offer to farmers is at least 50% more than A2 plus FL. Government says that whatever is the cost that farmer is incurring, we are giving him more than 50% of that. That is, government says that if farmers A2 plus FL is 100 rupees, then our MSP is at least 150 rupees. However, the demand of farmers and the recommendation of MS Swaminathan is that government should consider C2 instead of A2 plus FL. A2 plus FL is 100 rupees, and when you include everything and you bring C2, C2 comes suppose 120 rupees. Okay, you add 50% in it, you will get 180 rupees. So according to farmers and MS Swaminathan, government should declare the MSP at least 180 rupees. That is more than 50% over C2. Now about the CACP. So CACP, Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, it was formed in 1965 by some other name. In 1985 it got its present name. It comes under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. It recommends MSP for 23 commodities. Those 23 commodities are 7 cereals, 7 oilseeds, 5 pulses and 4 commercial crops. Right? If you want, you can learn the name of them, but otherwise I would say there is no real need. Just read them 2-3 times. No need to learn by heart each and every name. Okay. Now the 1995 question in prelims was about the objectives of CACP. First is to stabilize agricultural prices. Second is that farmers should get some meaningful income. And third is consumers should get essential commodities at reasonable price. See, FCI procures goods at MSP from farmer, right? And then it sells in the market. And MSP also decides, although FCI from through state governments, that crops, food grains are coming to the common man at 1 or 2 rupees. However, like I explained it to you earlier, that when FCI is doing procurement at MSP, that in a way also sets the rate for the open market also. Throughout the country, there is not much fluctuation in the price of wheat and rice, right? So therefore, your MSP, when your CACP recommends MSP, then it takes into consideration the real income of the farmer, interest of the farmers, interest of the consumers also, open consumers, not your PDS shop consumers, okay? And overall stabilizing the agricultural prices, that there should not be much fluctuation, right? So first 3 points are absolutely correct about the objectives of CACP. Fourth point is to ensure maximum price for farmer. Why maximum price for farmer? You can say to ensure minimum price for the consumer. No, maximum price to farmer, minimum price to consumer, these things sound good, but they are not sustainable. Okay, to bring sustainability to the system, you need to create a balance between the two. 2018 question. Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has announced MSP for which of the above? Either you can learn all the names, okay, or you can be a bit smart. You can think about the purpose of MSP. Purpose of MSP is that the consumer should get essential commodities at reasonable price. We are not talking about the Essential Commodities Act. We are talking about essential commodities in general, in your daily life, what a consumer definitely needs, right? That is the purpose of your MSP. Now this MSP, will it include coffee? I don't think coffee is an essential commodity from consumer's perspective. Now from farmer's perspective also, I don't think that poor farmers grow coffee. Coffee is a plantation crop. Okay, it is grown in big plantations like tea, coffee, all these things. So it is unlikely that there will be a MSP for coffee. Now see, option 3 is there in A, C and D. Therefore B is your correct answer. ENAM, I have already explained. It was started in 2016. It connected the existing APMCs. It is implemented by Small Farmers Agri Business Consortium, which works under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. Now there was this misleading, it is not fake news, but it is misleading news. Okay, a layman will, after reading this news, think that till now farmer could not sell outside his state. Through amendment to Essential Commodities Act, farmer can now sell outside his state. Such a misleading news, right? Had this news been true, then how would this ENAM be possible? ENAM is working since 2016, na? In 2017 also UPSC asked about ENAM, that ENAM is a pan-India electronic trading portal for agricultural commodities. Through this, farmer can access nationwide market, not just his local APMC. He can access nationwide market, right? So both 1 and 2 are correct. Contract farming also I already explained it to you during the second farm law. Okay, this thing I already explained to you. Model Contract Farming Act. uh, Tamil Nadu was the first state that enacted a contract farming law as per this Model Contract Farming Act. Please remember one thing, that agriculture is a subject in the state list. However, contracts come under concurrent list. Therefore, contract farming also comes under concurrent list. FPOs, Farmer Producer Organization. There can be different type of producers, primary producers. When different primary producers get together and form a legal company, then that is called as a producer organization. When farmers form a producer company, then it becomes a farmer producer organization. Why is it needed? Individual farmer needs to purchase seeds, fertilizer, and many other things. Water for agriculture, okay, many things. Water for irrigation, okay. Loan from the bank, market information, weather information, new technologies, how to improve productivity compared to other farmers, okay, how to reduce cost, how to tackle new crop diseases, right? Then he needs to sell it. To whomsoever farmer sells, that person may process the farm produce and market it in a good way to earn lots of money. Farmer can also do this thing, but individual farmer is weak. He cannot do all these things in an optimum way. And same process so many farmers need to do. So what they will do is they will come together and they will form a company. And we are not talking about a small cooperative like 15-20 farmers come together. No, we are talking about hundreds and thousands of farmers. For example, in 2011, Government of India helped 2.5 lakh farmers form just 250 FPOs. That is on an average 1000 farmers per FPO. When so many farmers are in a single FPO, that FPO acts like a proper company. There will be professionals in it. Professionals for procurement, for seeing the finances, for new technologies, professionals for processing and marketing. And whatever is the profit from that company, that will be shared between the farmers, because farmers are the owners of that company. Today in our country, we have more than 5,000 FPOs. Government in 2019 started a 5-year scheme, that is scheme for formation and promotion of FPOs. Under this scheme, another 10,000, not these 5,000, in addition to this 5,000, new 10,000 FPOs will be formed in 5 years. Implementation agencies are Small Farmers Agri-Business Consortium, NABARD, and National Cooperative Development Corporation. MSP for MFP. MFP means minor forest produce. In a forest, there are trees. You can think that in a tree, the main component here is the trunk of the tree. That is, when you cut it, you call it as timber. Okay, you cut the trees, you get the timber. However, there are many products that you can get without cutting the tree. You can get fruits, honey, leaves, wax or resin from the stem, many things. For such things, you don't need to cut the tree. Such things are called as non-timber. This is timber. So non-timber forest produce. Okay. Forest dwellers, the people who live in the forest, they don't cut trees, but they use the forest produce. They use these non-timber forest produce, also called as minor forest produce. MFP is minor forest produce, and they are obviously dependent on them, right? So Forest Rights Act 2006 gives ownership of these minor forest produce to the forest dwellers. It is not just limited to these things. There are hundreds of minor forest produce. Okay, the ownership of them is with the forest dweller. Now when these forest dwellers collect them and they want to sell it in the market, then they should get some minimum selling price. right? So this scheme of MSP for MFP was started in the year 2011. Some coaching institutes say it is 2013. No, see, this is from Press Information Bureau. It simply states that it is 2011. Okay, and MSP is revised every 3 years. Here MSP is not recommended by CACP. It is recommended by Pricing Cell under Ministry of Tribal Affairs, and the nodal agency here is not FCI, it is TriFed. So that is about MFP. Next is about the agri commodity trading. See, just like there are stock exchanges like BSE, NSE, where you buy and sell shares of companies, similarly there are commodity exchanges where you can buy and sell gold, cotton and other many commodities. For example, MCX, ICX, NMCE, all these are commodity exchanges. Like in 2009, UPSC simply asked, what is MCX SX? It is a stock exchange for commodities. Right, now look at this, a very simple example. This is Bombay Stock Exchange. This is you. Okay, you want to buy shares of Reliance. You tell your broker that I want to buy 10 shares of Reliance at a certain price, let us say 2000 rupees. Okay, and broker will place your order at the exchange. Similarly, there will be someone else who would want to sell his Reliance shares. He will tell to his broker, and the broker will place the order at the exchange that my client wants to sell 10 Reliance shares at such and such price. Similarly, thousands of people are placing their orders, and every second thousands of orders are getting matched and executed. All this is happening through exchange. Now when you place an order, you are least worried who the other party is. It simply does not matter. It is a work of exchange to get to match the orders. Okay, whoever wants to buy and whoever wants to sell, okay, na, to match those orders, it is a work of exchange. There is no quality. These are not fruit and vegetable that I want such a quality of Reliance shares. Reliance shares means Reliance shares. You just tell the price. Okay, so who is the other owner? It doesn't simply matter. Okay, this trade is happening through a exchange. It can be your commodity exchange, it can be your stock exchange. There is other type of trade called as OTC trade or over the counter. Here the trade happens directly between a buyer and a seller. You are the buyer, he is a seller. Here you guys will directly do the trading. There is no exchange in between. Such a trade is called as OTC or over the counter trade. Next is about the derivatives. Derivatives I have already explained on page number 35 under P notes or participatory notes. There in detail I had explained how the sovereign gold bond work, because sovereign gold bonds are a type of derivatives. Still, I will just tell you in brief. This is gold coin. The value of gold increases or decreases. Now you take a piece of paper and on this you write the value of gold. Let us say value of 10 grams gold. Now as the value of gold fluctuates, similarly at the same time the value of this piece of paper of this derivative will also fluctuate. Okay, similarly there can be a derivative for oil also. Here you can write that, let us say 10 barrels of oil, something like that. Okay, now when the price of barrel of oil will change, the price of this derivative will also change. This is just a piece of paper. On its own it has no value, but it is deriving its value from the value of oil. Similarly, this is the shares of Reliance. The value of shares will increase or decrease. This is a derivative of maybe a futures, right, of futures of Reliance shares. So on this will be written, let us say 10 shares of Reliance. So its value will also increase or decrease as per shares of Reliance, the change in the value of Reliance shares also. Otherwise in itself it has its no value. It is deriving its value based on the value of Reliance shares. So these are our derivatives. In detail I have explained in page number 35. Now there is spot market, forward market, futures market and a options market also. Okay, very simple concept. Think like this. Spot means on the spot, right now. You want to buy petrol from a petrol pump. You go to the petrol pump, you give rupees 100 and you get 1 liter petrol. On the spot, the transaction is complete. This is your spot market. In a forwards market, it is a OTC, over the counter trade in future. That is, you will tell to the petrol pump owner कि भैया tomorrow morning my exam is there, I will come to you, ठीक है ना, I don't have much money, so let us decide right now only that tomorrow morning I will come to you and at 6 a.m. and at 6 a.m. I will pay you 100 rupees or let us say 101 rupees and you will give me 1 liter petrol. Right now you do the deal with me for tomorrow morning or for next Thursday or for next to next Thursday, something like that. ठीक है ना. So right now you're doing this dealing, that is for future you are doing a OTC trade, you are doing an agreement. Now this was OTC, you both are doing it among yourself. What if you do this through a exchange? In between there will be exchange. On this exchange you put an order that on next Thursday I want 1 liter petrol at let us say 101 rupees. ठीक है ना. Similarly someone else would put the order that next Thursday I want to sell 1 liter petrol at 101 rupees. ठीक है ना. Now exchange will match these things. This is a futures trade. That is a forward through a exchange. In options, you will have the option that when the next Thursday comes, you will see the market price. Maybe in market, petrol is not of 101 rupees. Maybe the petrol is of 110 rupees. Maybe the petrol is of 90 rupees per liter. Could be anything. On that basis, do you have the freedom to say no to the exchange? That yes, I promised to you, you will say to exchange that yes, I promised to you that on next Thursday I will buy 1 liter petrol by giving 101 rupees, but now I don't want to buy it. If you have this freedom, then that means what you purchased was not futures, you purchased options. Okay, so these forward, future, options, these are derivatives. I think this much is enough for your prelims examination. More than this, UPSC will not ask. Animal husbandry. For animal husbandry, government has created a fund, Animal Husbandry Infra Development Fund, to create infrastructure in the animal husbandry sector. So UPSC infrastructure is mainly required because many agricultural commodities are perishable, especially dairy products, meat, animal feed. All these things are, many of these things are perishable. Therefore, you need proper cold storage and processing infra for them. Right? Now, who will create this infra? Will a small and marginal farmer create such infra? Of course not. Therefore, this scheme is not for him. This scheme is for farmer producer organizations, MSMEs, private companies that can create some meaningful infra. To create infra, you need money. Therefore, government will finance up to 90% of that money through loan, and it will also give you 3% interest rebate on that loan. Suppose the loan is of 7%, 3% interest waiver, therefore you will have to pay just 4%. And this scheme is under Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. Which country is the largest livestock population in the world? It is India. Livestock census. Livestock census was, see, human census is done after 10 years, but livestock census is done after 5 years. Okay, it was first done in 1919 and recently in 2019, 20th livestock census was conducted by Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying. India is number 1 in livestock, buffalo and milk production. India is number 2 in fish, poultry and goat. Nothing much to understand here. For fishes, again some very basic data. Fishes contribute 6% to our agricultural GDP, 20% to our agri exports and 5% of total exports. India is second largest producer of fishes in the world, but fourth largest exporter. So India is not the biggest exporter of fisheries. Fisheries is a state subject. So within our land, all the inland fisheries, it comes under the state government, and the territorial waters up to 12 nautical miles of the coast. Sorry, coast is not here. Okay, till here. Till 12 nautical miles from the coast, it is a state government's responsibility. From 12 nautical miles onwards till 200 nautical miles, that is till the limit of our exclusive economic zone, it is a responsibility of central government. There is a scheme, Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. launched in September 2020 for 5 years. Here, focus will be on everything related to fisheries, creating infrastructure. Fishes are perishable, right? Promote startups, create farmer producer organization, the fish farmers, genetic improvement of fishes, right? For example, we have launched a fish cryo bank. Here, fish sperms will be stored so that fish farmers can purchase fish sperms throughout the year whenever they want. Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute was established in 1947, headquartered in Kochi. It comes under ICAR. Agri exports. So there was 2 news articles in PIB, and from them the data relevant for your prelims examination, what I think is relevant, that I have noted it here. So here it clearly says that India has consistently maintained trade surplus in agricultural products. Okay, so whatever agricultural products we export in agricultural products, our exports are more than our imports, which is a good thing. So last year, in the last financial year, I think in 1920 financial year, we exported 2.5 lakh crore worth of agri goods, and we imported worth rupees 1.5 lakh crore rupees. Exports are approximately 10% of our agri GDP, and imports are approximately 5% of our agri GDP. India's share in world agriculture exports is very less, just 2.3%, and in imports even lesser at 1.9%. See, India produces lots of agricultural products, but our share in exports is very less. Why? The reason is huge population. There is a strong domestic demand. For example, India is world's number 2 producer of fruits and wheat. But in exports it is at number 23, number 34, because we consume wheat, we consume fruits, right? There is some basic things that you should know. For example, UPSC can simply ask, silviculture is related to what? It is related to forest. Sericulture is related to raising of silkworms so that you can make silk cloth. Okay, farming of fishes is called as pisciculture. Farming of bees is called as apiculture. Farming of birds, aviculture. Farming of fruits and vegetables, horticulture. Right? Why this information is important for your prelims as well as mains. For example, in 2013 mains, UPSC asked a question on pink revolution in food industry. If you think, many people would have thought that pink revolution means women participation in agriculture. Now, if you write an answer on that lines, you will get 0, because pink revolution means revolution in meat industry. Like white revolution is about the increasing the production of milk. So pink revolution is about increasing the production of meat. Green revolution, food grains. Grey revolution for coffee or leather. Blue revolution for fish. Yellow revolution for edible oil. We started yellow revolution in 1987. Okay. So these terms are very important for your mains examination also, else you can score a complete 0 in a question. I'll give you another example. In I think 2017, in GS1, there was a question on cryosphere. Now there was not much detail in the question. It was a single line question. That year many students did not know the meaning of cryosphere. Cotton. So the news was about Kasturi cotton. So UPSC will say that Kasturi cotton is a new variety of hybrid cotton or a genetically modified cotton, something like that. It is no. Kasturi cotton is simply a brand. Okay. So India produces cotton, India exports cotton. There are many varieties of cotton, many qualities of cotton. Now there is a long staple cotton of long fibers. Okay. Not of short fiber, but of long fibers. So this long staple good quality cotton, for that we have got a branding by the name Kasturi cotton. Whenever there is branding, it helps in your export. Okay, so just remember what is Kasturi cotton. India is the second largest producer of cotton in the world and also the largest consumer. largest area under cotton cultivation is in India. But India is not the largest producer. India is second largest producer. Why? Because our yield per hectare is less. Okay. 23% of global cotton is produced in India. 51% of global organic cotton is produced in India. India is the only country that grows all four species of cotton. So you don't have to learn the four varieties, the four species. Just remember that all the four species start with the name Gossypium. Okay. These scientific names are also somewhat important. For example, I think in 2018 prelims, there was a question: what is Prosopis juliflora? So Prosopis juliflora, it is a scientific name of an invasive species. It was in news a few weeks before your prelims. ठीक है, तो similarly UPSC will simply say what is Gossypium and Gossypium something. So wherever you see this term, understand it, we are talking about the cotton. In India, most area under cotton cultivation is in Maharashtra, and biggest cotton producer is Gujarat. From cotton, we all know we make khadi cloth. So is every cloth made from cotton, is it khadi? No. Khadi means hand spun and hand woven cloth. We have cotton fiber. From this raw cotton fiber, through spinning process, that is through charkha, we make thread. From thread, when we arrange threads in a crisscross fashion, we weave them. This weaving process brings us fabric. When you stitch the fabric, you get your t-shirt or trousers. This spinning process of charkha can be done by machine also, like by spinning jenny. When spinning jenny was invented in Britain, then our production shifted there. Okay, slowly that is how Britishers gained economic control. And handloom also. So this is operated, like in this figure, it is operated by hand, but it too can be operated by machines, by power, that is power loom. So when you call it khadi, it essentially means that you are not using any spinning jenny, you are not using any power looms, you will be using hand looms and charkha, that is hand spun and hand woven. That cloth will be khadi cloth. Now, where is this definition coming from? Is there a law? Yes. Khadi and Village Industries Commission Act 1956. Through this law, we established KVIC, and KVIC comes under Ministry of MSME. This law clearly states that khadi means any cloth woven on handlooms in India from yarn handspun in India. In 2019, Khadi got HS code. So HS code is beneficial. If you have a HS code for your products, then your customs clearances, international trade becomes easy, right? HS code I have already explained earlier also. So in 2019, Khadi got its separate HS code. What is COT Ally? So COT Ally is mobile app by Cotton Corporation of India. Cotton Corporation of India is a PSU under Ministry of Textiles. UPSC will say it is under Ministry of Agriculture related to cotton. No, it is Ministry of Textiles, and it does price support operations for cotton. If the price of cotton falls or rises too much, then the Cotton Corporation of India interferes in the market. Okay, it may purchase or sell cotton. 2020 question. Description of a crop is given. You need to identify the crop. So wherever you read the word 210 frost-free days, I think from our childhood days we have been studying in school that wherever this 210 frost-free days are written, it will be about cotton only. Rice. So to promote rice export, a agency will work, that is APEDA. APEDA is a statutory body under APEDA Act 1985. It comes under Ministry of Commerce. The main aim of APEDA is your food promotion, food exports, okay, export of your food products, agricultural and processed foods export promotion development authority. It is a statutory body under Ministry of Commerce. India is world's largest exporter of rice, right? Next will be your, okay, this question of 2019. It is talking about cultivation of some kharif crops. It is a very data intensive question. It is asking about which crop has how much area under cultivation. Very difficult question it may seem, but it is a very simple question. Read sentence number 2. Area under cultivation of jawar is more than that of oil seeds. Yeah, jawar is an important crop. That's true. But we are comparing jawar with oil seeds. See, India consumes lots of edible oil, and we also import lots of edible oil. But our domestic production is also very high. Oil seeds means many oil seeds, like your groundnut. Now compare jawar on one side. Okay, compare jawar on one side, and other side you include the area under cultivation of groundnut, your sunflower, and mustard, linseed, castor. You include all these. Now compare them. Is it possible that jawar's area under cultivation will be more? No, right? So we are comparing jawar with all the oil seeds. That is not possible, right? So option 2 has to be wrong. Now see the options. Option 2 is in 3 options. Therefore, only A, that is 1 and 3 are correct. Another way of solving this question is option 4. Area under sugarcane cultivation has decreased. Why would it steadily decrease? He is not talking about 1 year. Okay, it is talking about trend, that it has steadily decreased. If you are reading newspaper, you must be knowing that the reason for water crisis in India, one of the major reasons is sugarcane cultivation. Farmers are producing more and more sugarcane, right? And then they are asking for FRP from sugar mills, and sugarcane consumes lots of water, which is creating droughts in India. Okay, this news has been coming for like 3 or 4 years, right? So if you're reading newspapers, you must be knowing that area under sugarcane cultivation cannot steadily decrease. So statement 4 is wrong. Again, statement 4 is in B, C and D. Therefore, A is the correct answer. So such seemingly difficult questions are also very easy if you apply your mind, stay cool, calm, composed in an examination. 2020 question. Which of the following factors or policies were affecting the price of rice in India in recent past? See, I have told you that the price of wheat and rice are very stable. Of other crops, they may fluctuate a lot. So there may be some specific reasons. But for wheat and rice, there is never any specific reason, because their price never fluctuates a lot. It's a very, in a very small range, the price remains there, right? So the question here is a bit misleading, just to confuse you. Okay, what affected the price of rice? First of all, reassure yourself that the price of rice due to MSP system has not fluctuated. Okay, it has not fluctuated much. Now, when the price is not fluctuated much, that means the question is about what factors affect the price of rice in general, right? Now think like this. What factors affect the price of rice? Obviously, there is minimum support price. Government procures lots of rice at MSP. That will affect the price of rice. Government distributes rice after giving subsidies to people through PDS shops. That will affect the price. Government's stockpiling. Government creates a buffer stock of rice. That will affect the price. That is common sense, right? Now, if you see option B, 1, 3 and 4. 1, 3 and 4. Most of the students would have thought that government's trading is not correct. Many students thought that why would government trade? See, government procures from the farmer at MSP, government gives at PDS shop, and government maintains a buffer stock. Why would government do the trading? Actually, government does the trading. Okay, when FCI procures from farmer, it gives to the at the PDS shops through state governments and maintains a buffer stock. But in the open market also, in your open market also, prices are affected due to MSP only, right? So that I've explained earlier also. Now another thing is, if most of the farmers are selling their crop, their rice to FCI only, then there may be some scarcity in the open market. So in case there is scarcity in the open market and the price increases, then FCI will immediately sell rice in the open market through OMSS, Open Market Sales Scheme. Okay, it's a pretty common thing. FCI, after every some time, it offloads some rice in the open market. So FCI suppose procures from the farmer at between 20 to 25 rupees at MSP. Through PDS shop, it gets only, I think, 2 or 3 rupees. But when FCI offloads this rice in the open market, then it gives this sells this rice at no profit no loss, almost no profit no loss. It procures at 20 to 25 rupees at the same price, almost same price FCI sells in the open market through open market sales scheme. So in this way, government trades in rice, government trades in food grains, in your wheat and rice. Okay, excess buffer stock with FCI, so FCI will sell it in the open market if there is excess buffer stock. If there is scarcity in the market, last year due to lockdown, people did not have much food, so NGOs and social institutions were distributing free food. That time also FCI said that if you want, to the NGOs, FCI said that if you want rice, you can come to us and you can purchase rice from us at OMSS price. Okay, here also same thing, to clear the stock. So yes, the point I'm trying to make here is government does trade for rice and wheat. So all the 4 options here are correct. Another thing that was in news is about direct seeding of rice. See, you must have seen this picture, that how rice is grown. So what happens here is, when you directly, like in this picture, if you directly sow rice in the field, along with the rice plant, there will be many weeds. Okay, and ultimately you will see that your farm is flooded with weeds and very less rice. To prevent such a thing, what we do is we transplant the rice. That is, we grow the rice. We don't grow the rice here or here. We grow the rice in nursery. When the rice plant has grown this much, then we flood the field with water, and we manually by hand we transplant these rice plants from nursery to the field. Here rice plant is already grown up this much. Okay, it is being transplanted, and since the water is flooded to the field, weeds won't grow. By the time water level decreases, weeds will start to grow. But by that time, your rice plant would have already grown so much, right? So the whole purpose of doing this activity is to prevent the weed growth. Fine. Now what is direct seeding of rice? Here we are using a herbicide to kill the weeds. So here we are saying we will directly sow the rice in the farm. And since then weeds will start come, we will use herbicides, and that herbicide is such that it will kill the weeds but it will not kill the rice plant. So direct seeding of rice is a good alternative to the traditional way of growing the rice. Next is about sugarcane. See, please listen carefully, you may get confused otherwise. When a farmer grows wheat and rice, then Food Corporation of India purchases wheat and rice from farmer, and in return it pays to the farmer MSP, minimum support price, right? That much you know. Now about sugarcane. When a farmer grows sugarcane, then there are not much buyers of sugarcane generally, and it is only the sugar mills of that area that purchase that sugarcane. Now Government of India says we are FCI, Government of India says that we from FCI are not going to procure sugarcane, but we know that sugar mills will be procuring sugarcane. Hence we direct that sugar mills must pay at least some price, that is FRP, to the farmers. FRP is fair and remunerative price. Government of India says to FCI that when you procure wheat and rice, you should procure it at least at MSP that we are telling you. Similarly, Government of India tells to all the sugar mills, not government sugar mills, even the private sugar mills. Government of India tells to all the sugar mills that when you purchase sugarcane from the farmer, although both these are private parties, still government is dictating the terms. Government is saying when you purchase sugarcane from the farmer, you must pay FRP. It is just like MSP, but we are calling it as FRP, fair and remunerative price. Some state governments say that FRP is not sufficient for our farmers. They should be paid more. Therefore, state governments will say we are telling SAP, state advised price, that over and above whatever central government has told FRP, over and above that you have to give some more money to the farmer. That some more money is SAP. Fine, this funda is clear. Now when sugar mills purchase sugar cane, they will convert sugar cane into sugar. Now when sugar mills sell sugar in the market, and see farmers are producing this. See, listen, understand one concept very clearly. India has lots of wheat and rice because farmers are assured that government will definitely procure due to open procurement policy, and government will definitely pay us good price, that is MSP. So there is lots of wheat and rice in India. Similarly, government is saying that whatever sugarcane farmers are growing, sugar mill has to purchase it, and it has to purchase it at least at FRP. So many farmers are happy. Wow, we will grow lots of sugarcane because we have assured sale, right? Now due to the assured sale, lots of sugarcane farmers are growing sugarcane. When there is so much sugarcane, what will the sugar mill do? It will convert it into sugar, lots of sugar. When there is lots of sugar in India, then prices will fall. When prices are falling, how will sugar mills pay to the farmer? So government says that when a sugar mill sells sugar in the market, at the factory gate, when it is selling, at the factory gate it is selling the sugar, it should sell at least at MSP, minimum selling price. This is minimum selling price, not support price. Got it? So in case of sugarcane, MSP, who is getting the MSP? Factory is getting the MSP. In case of wheat and rice, it is a farmer who is getting the MSP. Fine. So this FRP is given by center on recommendation of CACP. It is done under the Sugarcane Control Order 1966. What are the factors that are considered? Obvious factors. When you when the sugar mill converts sugarcane into sugar, then there is a small factor of, let us say, 10%. If 1000 kg of sugarcane is procured, then only 100 kgs of sugar is produced. Okay, some bagasse and molasses will also be produced. They will also be sold. So this conversion factor is taken into account. Recovery, okay, some profit margin, production cost, all these things are taken into account, and then FRP is recommended. Before FRP, the word FRP is used since 2009. Before FRP, we used to use the word statutory minimum price. Fine. So SMP and FRP is almost the same thing. Don't get confused. For MSP, government has issued Sugar Price Control Order 2018. Okay, it is for sale by sugar mills at the factory gate. Both these control orders, Sugarcane Control Order and the Sugar Price Control Order, both these control orders are issued under which Act? Essential Commodities Act 1955. See this 2015 question. Fair and Remunerative Price, FRP, is approved by Cabinet Committee on Economic Reforms. CACP recommends it. CACP recommends and CCEA approves it. When you crush the sugarcane, when you crush it, you get sugarcane juice and you get bagasse. You must have seen this, no? Right? Now this bagasse has some good calorific value. This bagasse is used to heat up the sugarcane juice. When you boil the sugarcane juice, then you will get sugar. You can get gur or jaggery, and a byproduct. One byproduct is molasses. So basically, when you crushed it, you got a byproduct as bagasse. And when you boiled sugarcane juice, you got a byproduct as molasses. Sugarcane, you crush it, you get sugarcane juice and bagasse. Bagasse can be used for power generation, to boil the sugarcane juice, or for paper production. Sugarcane juice can give you sugar, jaggery, or a byproduct called molasses. You can use this molasses as a cattle feed, or to make alcohol or ethanol. So ethanol or your biofuels will be discussed later on in the updated material. See this 2003 question. Molasses is a byproduct of this process? Correct. Bagasse is obtained. Bagasse obtained in sugar mills is used as a fuel in boilers here to generate steam for sugar factories. Correct. It is used as a source of energy. And sugar can be produced only from sugarcane? No. Sugar can be produced from few other things also, like beetroot also. Right? So sugarcane is not the only source. There is a law, Jute Packaging Material Act 1987. It says whatever food grains you are storing, wheat, rice, all of them you have to store only in the jute bags. It is mandatory by law. Okay, and whatever sugar you are producing, at least 20% of that sugar has to be stored only in the jute bags. Why such a law? To promote jute, because jute is a labor intensive industry. Lots of people get employment from jute. Therefore government brought this law. Now after every few months, or I think year, government revises this, I think almost annually. Okay, government says that yes, this order will continue. So here also in October 2020, government said that this 100% limit and 20% limit must continue. Problem is, with jute packaging, food grains and sugar gets spoilt because it absorbs moisture from the air. Next is cow science exam. So the Rashtriya Kamdhenu Ayog was to conduct a Gau Vigyan Prachar Prasar exam or cow science exam. To conduct this exam, it had even issued a study material as a reference material, and the examination was to be conducted in the month of February. The target of cow science, to promote cow science, the target is the youth of our country, college going students. Okay, therefore we are also establishing Kamdhenu chair or Kamdhenu research center in all colleges and universities across the country. Right? In fact, the University Grants Commission had told to all the universities throughout the country that you must ensure that your college students are appearing in this examination. In fact, around more than 5 lakh people had already registered for this examination also. But this exam got postponed. Actually, it got cancelled. Why? Because in this reference material, study material, okay, it is a government agency, right? Rashtriya Kamdhenu Ayog. This is PIB news. This government agency, in its reference material, it had things like, in 1984, when Bhopal gas tragedy happened, 20,000 people died. But people who were living in houses with cow dung, they were not affected. Even today, nuclear power plants in India and Russia use gobar, this cow dung, against radiation. This is not a WhatsApp forward. I mean, yes, it is a WhatsApp forward, but it is also, such things are also written in this government agency's reference material for this cow science examination. I mean, the logic is simply marvelous. Like, this is a house, there will be some doors and windows, and in case this house is made from gobar, right? So what will happen, even if that harmful gas is entering your doors and windows, nothing will happen to you. Okay, and this phenomena is a proof, you can say, it is related to the fact that to protect yourself from nuclear radiation, India and Russia use cow dung in their nuclear reactors. I mean, this was gas, this was not nuclear gas. Still, whatever. Okay, so such things are there. See, the point here is, you have seen neem tree. Okay, all parts of neem tree have some use, even its roots. So neem tree is a excellent resource for us. Very good thing, right? We should protect neem tree. Does this mean that neem tree is a solution for everything? Of course not. Neem tree is very useful. Does not mean it is solution for everything. Similarly, cow is very much useful economically. See here, even after it stops giving milk, then also there are many business opportunities from cow. This government agency is saying, right? Fine. Cow is sacred. Cow is very economic. Cow is very beneficial. This does not mean that cow is a solution for everything. You got corona, drink her urine, your corona will be okay. No. Cow's urine is beneficial. Cow's dung is beneficial. This does not mean that it can that urine can cure your corona, or by burning the cow dung you can generate oxygen. This is a WhatsApp forward, right? This is not given in your this material, but it's a WhatsApp forward. If such things are true, then in the ICU where people were dying from oxygen due to lack of oxygen, you could have simply burnt cow dung. We have lots of cow dung. No one would have died for lack of oxygen in India. Such WhatsApp forwards are now being taught by our government. Finally, when some newspapers raised this issue, then government cancelled this examination. Okay, so what is Rashtriya Kamdhenu Ayog? See, I'm not against this all this cow promotion things. It is very much necessary. Okay, it's a very much necessary thing, but we should understand the difference between like reality and whatever. Rashtriya Kamdhenu Ayog. It was formed in 2019. It is not a statutory body. It is an executive body, right? It comes under Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. The purpose is to develop animal husbandry on scientific lines, to improve the breed and to stop the slaughter of cows. About our paid course. See, this is economy class 4. What I have taught you till now is the free portion. Okay, there are some more pages, and these pages will be explained in a video which is a part of our paid course. So basically, first class of economy current affairs was totally free on YouTube. Second class, some portion on YouTube, some is a part of paid course. Similarly for third class and fourth class. With this fourth class, we are ending the economy current affairs part 1 for prelims 2021. In a few months, we will get updated material. For that updated material, we will explain in 2 classes. Again, some part will come on YouTube, some will be part of your paid course. To get access to all these economy current affair videos, paid part, you need to pay 250 rupees for English video. Right? 250 rupees is not for each and every lecture. It is for all these paid classes of economy. Similarly, in future, if you want, you can pay again 250 rupees and get the classes, paid classes for environment, 250 for science and tech, and so on. Please make the payment. For the payment, you can see the description box of this YouTube video. Click on that link, make the payment, and within 48 hours, please wait for 48 hours. Within 48 hours, you will get an email, you will get access, you will be able to access the videos, right? Please check your inbox as well as spam box. Whenever we send a mail, for some reason, most of the emails that we send land in your spam box. So please do check your spam box as well. Thank you.